Hello everybody and welcome to the Money Shift YouTube channel. I am Thanasi and this is a 2019 Honda Civic Type R, but this just isn't any Type R. This is my Honda Civic Type R. And today, we're going to be doing a walk around of the car. I'm going to let you guys know of the car that Honda was able to create. And then we're going to take it on 3 different types of roads. 1, just your regular average town road. 2, your weekend back road. And 3, highway driving. Because as you guys know, how a car can perform is very different on those 3. And then I'm going to let you know why I picked this car, and should you. The Honda Civic Type R is one of the more outlandish looking cars amongst its competitors, and its competitors are the Golf R, Focus RS, Subaru STI, and Veloster N from Hyundai. But does this aero or body parts even do anything? Well, we'll start with this, the hood scoop. This is the first Civic of any kind that I can remember having a hood scoop, and its primary function is to cool the engine bay, right? This one is in fact functional, and not only does it attempt and actually do cool the engine bay, however, Honda also notes that it reduces lift at speed by relieving pressure from underneath, which is pretty cool. Next, well, we can't really see it without getting underneath the car, but these cars have a host of underbody pieces. And with that, they're able to produce a flat floor-like type system, which reduces lift. I'm making our way to the back here. You get to the more outlandish pieces of this car, and that's the wing. 66 pounds of downforce at 124 miles per hour, and there's 2 prongs to this wing. There's this massive portion, but then there's this roof spoiler up here.
Alright, I put it off, but let's address it, and let's address it quickly. The fake vents. Yes, I know they exist. Yes, I know they are fake. Yes, this is a product of 2019 and above styling. Everything from Audi R8 facelifts to Toyota Supras and SQ5s to lowly Camrys. This is just a product of our new reality, and that is not okay, but it's the new normal.
Now this for me is the most controversial part of the 2019 Civic Type R, and I'm not even talking about its crazy looks. I'm talking about its wheel tire package. These are 20s. 20-inch wheel tire on a Honda Civic. Why did they do that? I'm not entirely sure, but behind that, you have 13-point-inch rotors with Brembo brakes, which stop this 3,100-pound car incredibly well. In fact, the only car lighter than it in the segment is the Veloster. This is 300 pounds less at least than any of its competitors, and part of that is because it's front-wheel drive over all-wheel drive. This is the power plant of the 2019 Honda Civic Type R. This is the K20 C1. And what does that stand for? Well, this is a K series engine. The 20 stands for it being a 2.0 liter engine. And that engine makes 306 horsepower in the United States, 316 if you're lucky enough to live in Europe or Japan. But the torque number, same worldwide, 295 pound-feet of torque. And you get that from 2,500 RPM, which is insanely low. And you'll see how that affects the driving later on. The red line of this, 7,000. So while pretty high for a turbo engine, that's incredibly lower than what we're used to seeing under the hood of a Civic Si or most performance Honda products. The other thing that is important to note is this is a turbo engine that has VTEC, something that the Civic Si does not have in its 1.5 liter engine. So first, let's start in the rear. So this seat in front is set for me. I'm 6 feet tall, and if you look, I got about 6 inches of legroom in front of me. And the roof, because this car is so tall, plenty of headroom here. I am more than comfortable for doing long drives back here. The one drag, there's no center console. There's no place to put my arm, and I'll show you guys that in just a second. But overall, I could spend a lot of time back here. Not that I will, because I'll usually be driving. But it's important to know that this is a usable car. You can throw a family of 4 in here, no problem. While there's no fifth because of cup holders, you could easily get away with having 4 people in this car. Now let's take a look at the front. This is a driver's car, in fact, so you're going to be spending a lot of time here. So what is to note? So this is a 2019 model, which means 2 things to the interior. 1, The return of this guy right there, the volume knob. In previous years of this car, it was a button, a touchscreen button, and it was horrible. It was hard to use, and a lot of people made a lot of noise. So major kudos to Honda for returning a volume knob to the display. The second thing, right here, they added an extension to the USB so you could plug it in a reasonable location, and it didn't have to be all the way at the bottom. So what is good about this interior? Well, for one, the seats are amazing. You can only get red in the Type R unless you're in Europe, where they have the new Sport line, and then you can get them in black. But for us in the US, we're stuck with these guys. So how are they? Well, I know they look incredibly aggressive. These are very high bolstering, but for me, I'm a 6 foot tall, 280 pound man, so not small by any means. They're incredibly comfortable. You can click off miles with these no problem, and I would actually put them in the top 2 in the segment, with the Golf R probably having the most comfortable seats. Let's get going in the 2019 Honda Civic Type R. Now, where else better to start this 3-prong test than where this car was made for? The back roads. So what's the first thing you notice when you get into a Honda Civic Type R? Well, 3 things. 1, the steering. Its weighting is incredibly high in comparison to any car on the market today that's in this price range, quite frankly, including its competition. Even in its base comfort mode, you have a heavier steering than quite honestly I've ever experienced for a new car. With that heavy steering, though, comes precision. In these corners coming up, because of the weighting of the steering, I'm able to place this car exactly where I want. I know what input to give it, and I know where it's going to go because of that input. The second thing you notice, this transmission, it's incredible. Performance Hondas forever, honestly, have been one of the better shifting transmissions on the market. Their engagement in the clutch is perfect. It's very communicative. You know at what point it's going to do what. The throws are direct and precise. You're never guessing what gear you're in. And it's just overall a really great system to use. It's why manual cars were created, and I couldn't thank Honda anymore for preserving that. The third thing you notice in the twisties is the noise. This 2.0 liter turbo isn't one of the better sounding engines on the market, but Honda's done its job to quiet it, honestly. And while those 3 pipes in the back are meant to reduce drone at highway speeds and increase noise when you get on it, it's never a loud system. And it's just a lot of more so than it is character or anything like that. So I'm happy that it is quiet, thankfully. Honestly, though, driving this car through these corners, through these corners, you really do see how good of a performer it is. There's no body roll. You can plant your foot on the gas outside of corners really quickly, even though it's a front-wheel drive car, and it just rockets right out of it. You'll see as we get to these corners right up here in a second. As we get into these corners, I'm going to put it into sport mode, which is what the car starts in, if you can believe it. And in sport mode, I think it's the perfect sweet spot between incredibly aggressive and the opposite, comfort. You have really good weighting on the steering. The rev match downshifting is incredible, honestly. Easy. And the suspension in this car is composed regardless of speed, regardless of mode. One of the things that I wish this Honda Civic Type R had was customization. In cars like the Veloster N, even the Golf R, you can have your pick of steering, your pick of transmission, your pick of throttle tuning and frequency. But in this car, you're stuck with what Honda gives you. And to be honest, while those 3 modes are really good, my dream would be to have the comfort steering with Plus R everything else. I think the steering in Plus R, while nice, is incredibly heavy. And sometimes on the back road, you just want something that's a little easier to just maneuver. So pulling up to our second portion of this test, which is the highway, it's no surprise, guys. this car's a ton of fun in the back roads. It's something that you can take and honestly drive with whoever and whatever. If you have friends that are going out in exotic cars, you'll be able to keep up just fine in this Civic Type R. It's tremendous. It is a lot of fun in the back roads. But usually cars that are fun on back roads kind of suck on the highway. Does this car fall into that? We'll see. Right, let's get up to speed with the Civic Type R for the highway portion of the review. So let's start with the good. How is the Civic Type R on the highway? And in a word, it is great. The suspension tuning of this car is exceptional, and in comfort mode especially, it soaks up the bumps no problem. Any imperfection on the highway, while it can be a little bouncy at times, and that bounciness magnifies in Sport or Plus R, overall, it is a very fine ride. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is no S-Class or 5 Series or anything like that, but it's really comfortable, and you'll get no complaints from any of your passengers on how this thing rides on the highway. The other thing to note is its plantedness. I mean, I think, for lack of a technical word, I think because of the aerodynamics of this car and the wings and everything like that, the downforce that it generates at speed just provides a real sense of confidence. You can make lane changes really easily, even just pointed along down the road. It does a really great job of just being stable. That's not something that is can be said for some of the other cars in the segment. I mean, I think if you drive a Veloster N in a similar environment, it can be a little twitchier versus this one, which is rock solid, and that's a big testament to the outlandish looks for sure. And another thing that's great, this infotainment system, because to be honest, all I give a shit about is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So if a car has it, in my view, it's going to be more than sufficient, and this has it, so it's more than sufficient. I have the GPS that I want, I have the Spotify that I want, but how are the speakers? Well, the speakers are fine too. I mean, you got to remember, and you got to have with your expectations when you're driving this car, that it is based on a Civic. It is based on a car that costs around $20K base price. So while it's an upgraded system in here, you'll never get like a Bowers and Wilkins or Bang & Olufsen system or something like that, because it's still a Civic, right? So it's more than okay. I mean, the base can be a bit tinny, but overall it's just fine. So what are the cons? What doesn't the Civic do well? What should you be aware of if you're considering a Civic Type R and you do a lot of highway driving or a lot of long distance driving? Well, for one, road noise. These 20s on this Civic are incredibly loud, and because you're going to be likely going higher than 70, 75, because this thing cruises so easily at speed, you're going to hear it, and you're going to have to turn that system up a little bit more to really muffle that out. The other thing is this gearing, this transmission. While it is phenomenal to use around town or in the back roads, it's geared very short, and what that means is you're cruising at 75 miles an hour, you're at $3,000. So anything over 75 is over that 3,000 mark, which adds engine noise to the tire noise to just create an overall very noisy ride. This definitely isn't bank vaulty by any stretch. But is it so bad that I don't want the car anymore, or I wouldn't do road trips? No. I'll turn up the audio system a little bit and just go for it. It's fine. But it's definitely something to note if you want a more bank vault or just really quiet experience when you're on the highway. This definitely isn't it. But as we go over bumps there, I don't know if you saw me really jiggle around, but I didn't. These seats are incredibly comfortable, and this suspension does a great job of soaking up the bumps. How does the Civic Type R then compare to its competition? Well, like I alluded to before, I think the Veloster N is a lot worse on the highway. While it is okay, it's definitely bumpier, and you don't feel as confident at speed as you do in this Civic Type R. But the king is the Golf R, no question. If you guys are going to be doing a lot of road trips or a lot of highway driving and just value comfort and stability at those speeds, the Golf R is the car to get there. The Civic Type R plays a happy medium between the Golf R and the Veloster N, but it isn't as good as a Golf R for sure. All right, as we get off the highway and into town, I want to talk to you guys first what this part means to me. So in my review series, every car that we review is going to be driven on those three types of roads: the highways, the back roads, and this around town city type driving. So in this around town city type driving, what we're going to be doing is doing a lot of stop and go, a lot of lights, a lot of potentially traffic. I want to go over bumpy roads. I want to know how this car is in just the monotony that is just putt-putting around town. Is it something that is infuriating to drive? Is it something that overheats, quite frankly, in town driving? How does this car do if you're like quickly turning and doing things like that? So, how does it do? Well, for one, you're going to be shifting a lot in the Civic Type R, and thankfully it has one of the best shifters on the market today, so it's rewarding to use. But it is important to note, because of the short ratio, I'm cruising at 37 miles per hour right now, doing about 2200, and in fourth gear. So I had to 1, 2, 3, 4 from a stop just to cruise at 35. So don't get me wrong, you can definitely hold it in fourth gear, but in third gear or a lower gear. But if you want to cruise at a lower RPM, it's important to note that you're going to have to row through the gears a little bit. Something else is this rev match downshift. It is exceptional. And while you can't turn it off, it does make doing things like quickly shifting down to pass around someone or slowing down to a light if you don't just throw it in neutral really easy, which makes one of the hardest things about manual in traffic a non-factor. The other thing is the clutch engagement. Because the clutch is very communicative in this car in comparison to, say, a Golf R or a Civic Si, it makes it very easy. You know when the clutch is grabbing, you know when to let off, you know when to give it more gas, and because of that, even if you're in traffic, there's never any question. It is really easy to use. Something that we highlighted on the highway is really even more apparent in this town city driving portion, and that is the quality of the suspension. While it is a little bouncier on this around town with potholes and things like that, it is really stable and the car is really, really comfortable to drive. Would I recommend this car to someone? Certainly. Honestly, I haven't found this feeling behind driving a car like this in a while. I've been chasing it. I think I've been trying to find something that keeps me engaged on my daily commute during driving just like this, but also is something that can honestly get down and dirty on a back road. I've been trying to find that car for a really long time, and the Civic Type R is that. If you can get past its looks, or if you like it, like I do, quite frankly, then it is a solid option for you. Now, should you buy it? Well, honestly, I think much like a lot of other segments these days, all the options are really good. The Golf R is an exceptional car. The Veloster N is also a really great car. So I really do implore you guys in this case to drive all three, because for you, that answer might be different. For me, I chose the Civic Type R because I thought it had the ability to really let its hair down, but also compose itself when it wanted to, where I felt the Golf R couldn't really let its hair down like this car could, and the Veloster N could never button up. It was always playful. So I would implore you guys, now that these cars have been out for 2 or 3 years, you can find them on dealer lots that aren't Hondas. So what that means is you'll be able to drive it like I was, which is great news, because when these cars first came out, you couldn't even so much as breathe on them without putting a down payment on the car. So now that they've been out for a couple of years, you can drive them, and you certainly should. So thank you guys for joining this review. I appreciate it. This is the first of many, and they will improve as we go. So please, if you liked this video, like it, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel for more. We're going to be driving a Silverado 2500 HD next week, so changing it up pretty dramatically. So thank you guys, and as always, drive safe and be safe. Goodbye.